All right. Welcome to Living in the Past, where two middle-aged dudes relive the past by enjoying the pop culture of their youth. Devin, man, this is exciting. We are doing Dazed and Confused on this episode, and we are dazed and confused.
I'm sorry. Can you say it again? My ears are still ringing because I went to an ABBA tribute concert last night.
Yeah, how was that? How was that experience, Devin?
Let me just give you some of the highlights, Jeremy. So they're called Mania, the ABBA Experience.
Oh, great.
Now listen, here's a couple things that I was totally unprepared for when we went into this last night, right? It was myself, my wife, and our daughter, who is 11 years old, because she loves the Mamma Mia soundtrack from the film and all that. She's in the musical. So we thought this would be like a fun-ish family event.
Of course.
And so we get there, and Jeremy, what I wasn't prepared for. Well, there's a couple things I wasn't prepared. Here's the first thing I was not prepared for. I was not prepared for the musicians to go all in with fake Swedish accents.
No.
They not only like came out dressed as ABBA, they not only played and sung the songs like ABBA, but they actually took on the persona of the actual ABBA members.
Wow.
Including really bad Swedish accents.
That's great.
And then, as if it didn't get more weird and crazy, there were a couple people. Like I've been to some concerts in my day, Jeremy.
You have.
And I've been to some concerts in the recent past where, like, I'll snap a couple of photos because, like, I would put it in the old scrapbook. You know, there were people, Jeremy, that were filming the entire fucking concert of an ABBA cover band, like not even enjoying it, filming it.
Like on their phone?
Yes.
Okay, wow.
Yes. But here's what took the cake.
Okay.
During one of the opening numbers, the woman sitting in front of me, and obviously I'm a little younger than those that experienced ABBA in their heyday.
I was going to ask if you were the youngest person there.
My daughter was, but yes. And so this lady, do you remember one of the Cher videos where Cher kind of had like this like head scarf, but it was made out of like diamonds and stuff on it, right? Yeah. So this lady was wearing one of those, and she's probably like mid 70s or so. I have no problem with that. I'm just painting the picture for you.
Thanks.
She's sitting right in front of me. Behind me is an equally old, but certainly more curmudgeonly old man. And so this lady stands up to start dancing to Dancing Queen, all that. And the guy gets up and comes up and gets in her face and starts, you better sit down because I can't see the show. And here it is. Like, I didn't want to get my phone out, but I wish I had popcorn to watch it. And it's like going down in front of me. There's these two old people fighting over whether they should stand at an ABBA tribute concert. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Wow. Yes. Why go to an NFL football game? Just go to an ABBA cover band.
It was great. Yeah. Got a couple of blue hairs fighting over standing in an ABBA tribute band. But other than that, it was certainly enjoyable.
Of course. And I just can't believe someone would get upset about someone dancing to Dancing Queen.
Right. Right. At a concert.
I might actually kind of bob my head a little bit.
Well, I get my choice, Jeremy. As a middle-aged white dude, I can either sing along or I can clap along. I cannot do both at the same time.
Of course you can.
White guy got no rhythm.
That's right.
But it was fascinating. It was sold out. That was the thing. It was sold out too. And so in my head, so the theater holds 650 people.
Okay.
Packed, standing room.
Wow.
And so I calculated, like, what did this group make just on like ticket alone?
Ticket sales.
And it was like, it was probably close to $7,000 for that 2-hour journey of Swedish nostalgia.
Did they have shirts like with their?
It didn't have any merch.
Oh wow!
No, but they actually dressed the part in their sparkling. They had a couple costume changes. But dear listener, here's why I even tell this: is because Jeremy, I want to make it official that I will be starting a one-man 80s tribute, like breakup song. And I'm gonna start at like, I'm like Owner of a Lonely Heart with Yes. I'm just gonna work my way through the entire one-man show.
This is great.
Probably get a little Turnaround Bright Eyes somewhere in there.
You have to.
Total Eclipse of the Heart. Yes. I'll bring it, definitely. I'll have probably the middle section will be packed full of like Phil Collins Night Ranger-ish stuff.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
So that's if I'm not on the next couple episodes, it's kind of I'm getting my show
You're
together.
working that out.
I'm getting my show together.
Yeah, I mean, $7,000,
right?
You know, you're a one-man show.
I've done a lot stupider shit for less. I'll tell you that.
I like teaching. Oh man, Dazed and Confused, 1993.
Yeah.
Devin, where were you at in 1993 when this film came out?
Those were smack dab in the latter-ish section of the college days.
Yeah.
So it was this weird experience with this film, right?
Right,
Because
right.
I didn't have a traditional college experience. I was very much like go to class, get out of class, go work one of my two jobs.
Right.
So I didn't have the classic college experience, but it was also like this weird thing. And I don't know if you experienced this, Jeremy, but like when you're in college and there's stuff about high school and movies, I'm just like, I don't know if I really want to go like, you know, pay that much attention because, you know, high school's behind me now.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it was right smack dab in the middle of high school.
I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it the first time I saw it. At first in '93, I was in college.
Yeah.
Just started. I graduated about a year and a half before this movie came out, and I saw this on videotape. But what was interesting is we had sort of a Wooderson, a McConaughey kind of character that hung out with us.
Nice.
Who had graduated in '76.
No.
Yeah. So he's the one that he's like, we got to watch this. I graduated that year. His name's Jeff. And so we just, me and all my buddies, we were all like 19, 20.
Yeah.
We throw the videotape in with us. He was 30 something at the time. And we watched it. He was a piece of work. This guy had been a bouncer. He was working in the strength and conditioning program at the University of Alabama with a football team. And so he actually saved my life in New Orleans, this guy.
What?
So I was walking in the French Quarter. We went down there to watch. We went down to Baton Rouge to watch Alabama play LSU, and then we just bopped down to New Orleans, and we were walking around. And this was when I was pretty optimistic, open-minded guy. I was walking around, no fear in the world.
Oh boy.
And I was just enjoying the jazz musicians playing. I separated from the group.
You were.
Separated from the group.
Sure. Throwing a lot of beads at jazz musicians, Jeremy?
I was just hanging out, walking around, enjoying the French Quarter, and I got marked. And there was 5 of them, and I didn't know there were guys behind me. Oh. And so a guy came up and told me, he said, "Hey man, I can tell you where you got your shoes, like where you bought them." But he said it kind of like where you got them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. He goes, I tell you what, he goes, you give me $25. I tell you where you bought your shoes. And so I'm just like, no, I'm good, man. And so I'm walking. I'm like, this isn't good, but it's just one guy. I think I'll be okay. And he finally puts his hand on me and stops me.
Whoa.
He goes, no, I can tell you. I'm like, okay, tell me. He goes, well, you got them on your feet. I'm like, that's great. He goes, now that's $25. And 19-year-old Jeremy, might have been 20. I think I was 19. Stupidest thing I've ever said in my life.
Oh.
Because I didn't have $25. I barely had 10, but I had a quarter in my pocket. And I said, oh my God. I said, I'll give you a quarter because that's what you're worth.
Oh.
And I don't know why I said it. I was marked for death at that point. The guy was like, what the fuck did you say to me? And I was like, wait, I should have said that. And he was getting ready to just beat the crap out of me. But I kind of took a step back to like get some space between us.
Yeah.
And that's when I bumped into his boys.
Oh.
And there were like 2 or 3 guys behind me. Another guy was Jeff, this guy I watched Dazed and Confused with later.
Yeah.
Just comes barreling through the whole group, and he grabbed me and goes, Jeremy, I was been looking for you for 20 minutes. Come with me right now. Sorry, guys. He's always doing this. And he just pulled me out of there.
Like you're special.
Yeah. And so he drags me out of it. And the guys were like, just kind of like, you know, and
wow.
And Jeff he was a big guy.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
weightlifter guy.
Wow.
And just saved my life. But anyways, he's the guy that was like, let's watch this. And so I was simultaneously watching it through his eyes, who had experienced, he was from Texas.
Crazy.
So, of course, this is where Dazed and Confused is set,
Yeah.
you know, and he's, you know, enjoying the film. Like, yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
And here I am, who had just graduated from high school a few years earlier in Alabama, going, oh, we did that too.
Yeah,
Like, we grabbed garbage cans and threw them at mailboxes.
Right.
And we did it with bats too, you know.
Yeah.
And like, we were doing stuff like that. And like, there were hazing rituals for the upcoming like freshmen. And
Yes.
so it was weird to watch it with a guy that graduated that year of 76, but then also like to just connect with the film so much.
Yes.
And it is such a different film. For those of you that need some, of course, living in the past, our audience is a little bit older.
It's true.
So we might need to help you jog your memory. Of course, this film came out in 93. It's the last day of school in 1976. So it's like in May of 76, last day of school. And it follows two groups of students. It follows 8th graders who are on their way to 9th grade, and it follows juniors getting ready for their senior year. So it's going into last day of school into the first day of summer. And it's just what happened. You know, it's just, there's no like villain. There's no like quest or other than to get drunk and stoned and laid.
Sure.
But I mean, it really just is like someone just took some cameras and hung out with high school students in May of 76. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And of course, this cast is stacked. It's an amazing group of actors and actresses. Many you'll recognize, many character actors, but some big stars. Of course, Ben Affleck's in it. Matthew McConaughey, this is really his first role. And then, of course, Jason London's in the lead. But you have people like Joey Lauren Adams, who was in some Kevin Smith movies. It was real popular, like Chasing Amy. She became really popular for that movie. Adam Goldberg's in the film. He's well known for being in Saving Private Ryan as one of the soldiers in Saving Private Ryan. All these guys had various degrees of success. Mila Jovovich is in it. She, of course, went on to be in Fifth Element and the Resident Evil movies.
Right.
But the story of them, and of course directed by Richard Linklater, the story of them making it is almost as interesting as the movie itself. There's almost two kind of epic stories going on.
Yeah.
And I think this movie is one of the great high school films made. When you saw it, it grew on me. I saw it, I'm like, oh, I like that. And then I saw it again, I'm like, man, there's something about this. I love the soundtrack. It grew on me and grew on me. It's almost like you're listening to an album. And you get more and more used to the album, and then it becomes part of the fabric of who you are.
Yeah.
And
I think, something around this time period, right? This is 93, and it's a little bit before 93 when we get MVT. See, it's the ABBA. When we get MTV's The Real World, right? So this is the first
around the same time,
unscripted, quote unquote, reality stuff. And I think that this, in a lot of ways, follows that formula. And I think that that's one of the things, especially when it came out, which made it so much different from everything else that we were getting in the theater at that time, because it was like it's familiar, like you said, both because it's just kind of we're following. It's almost like fly on the wall, right? It's got timelessness in it as far as like, every rising 8th grader and every rising senior have some form of pursuit of illegal, if not fun things that they're trying to do.
Right.
Being just completely idiots. Even though that they wouldn't classify themselves as that. and of course, the other part of this, like you mentioned, the hazing and stuff that goes on. And so I think it's like it hit at a great time in American cinema history. I think had this come out later, if this had come out 10 years later, then we're already into more reality shows and stuff. And then I think it's almost like a cop-out. But because it's so fresh on that, I think that's one of the things that makes this movie a gem. Yeah,
it really is unique and special. And it just follows along these kids on this. You assume it's like a Friday night. And just as they kind of to go about the things that they're most interested in. But there's also an undercurrent in the film that's really interesting. And it's never, which is great about Richard Linklater as a director, he never really hits you over the head with stuff, but there's things there. And one of them is just the emptiness of it. And there's a moment where Pink, I think his name's Floyd, his last name's Floyd, and Randall Pink Floyd, Jason London's character, where they're on the football field and they're kind of like laughing, they're winding down. It's in the last like 15 minutes of the movie. It's right before the cops show up, and he's just kind of, he's like, I gotta get out of here. Like, this isn't it. This isn't it for me. And he's kind of staring off, just kind of like, what else is there? And there's a little bit of that in the movie where it's like, you know, there's this urgency, and I think young people in general, high school students in general, have that where they're like, I just got to get out of here.
Right.
And Linklater never like has a character say like, I really feel that this is an empty experience, and I'm longing for something deeper and more meaningful. And I can't wait to graduate. You know, I want to be my own person. You know. He never does that, but it's there. It's present in the film amongst all the silliness and the shenanigans and the kind of the real conversation. It felt like you were really there because kids talk like that. That's the thing, and they still kind of talk like that. Yeah. And you know, we both teach high school kids, and I've heard similar conversations, and they don't think I'm listening, but like they're having similar conversations.
And I think that that's one of the things, right? When you look at, I'll say not just from my own experience at that age, but now as a high schooler, and well, I'll even say as a parent watching my son go through it as well, as inevitably, you know, that junior, senior years of high school in particular, like the kids are pretty convinced that they've got their shit dialed in.
Yes, they do.
You know, like you can't tell me, you can't teach me, I know. And inevitably, I think it's those quiet times, though, when they're caught up in their regular routine that they've been doing for however long with the same people for however long. And then, like, inevitably, whether it's going into your senior year, coming into high school graduation, or maybe even early in college, when you just say, like, oh, I feel lost. Like, this was not what I was expecting. This is not what I was expecting.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the things that I really find, especially at this point in my life journey, like, I get that. I still get that because I see that look and hear those conversations just like you mentioned, right? Yeah. And at the same time, I quietly say to myself, oh, you're going to hit the wall soon.
Yeah.
You're going to hit the wall.
It's going to be a great wreck. A great wreck. Yeah, it is interesting. Especially, I notice it. We both work at a school that is 6th grade through 12th grade, and I notice the most freak out from kids that have been here since the middle school. They haven't had transitions. They haven't had big changes. Right. And they've kind of been running the show. Right. And they're like, oh, I'm going to be on the bottom rung soon. Right. And it's what does that mean?
Yes, what does that mean?
What does that look like? Oh, man. So Richard Linklater directed this film. He made Slacker a few years before, really put him on the map. It was an indie film. It was made in Austin, Texas, just like Dazed and Confused was sort of filmed around the Austin area and some other places as well. But Slacker really put Linklater on the map and kind of got Universal interested in him. And then he got this film, Dazed and Confused, funded. He ended up making it for about, I think it was around $6 million is what he made it for. It grossed like $8 million, but then it had like crazy album sales and then videotape sales and DVD sales. What's interesting about the film is that he really gives a lot of freedom to his actors. And so there is a script, there was a shooting script. They were writing on set sometimes, but there's several conversations. Like, for example, there's one conversation with Parker Posey and Joey Lauren Adams and one of the other actresses where they're in the truck. It's right when they're all cruising around. Right. And they're asking, like, well, what did she, you don't know who she is, but they're like, well, what did she say about me? What'd she say? And they're like, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. What'd she say? What'd she say? And she's like, well, she said, you're a bitch and you're a slut. And then one girl's like, that bitch, you know, and she gets so mad. She's like, I'm going to kick her ass. And it's like, those actresses wrote that scene. That's amazing. That's not a Linklater scene. It's them coming up with a scene. And there's actually a lot of moments like that. There's one of my favorite moments where Cole Hauser, who's real famous for Yellowstone now, he's drunk and he's sitting in the bed of his truck when they go to the moon tower at the end of the film. And he tries to stand up and he's toast and he can't, and he just kind of sits back down. Yeah. And that was all him. Like, he was like, I remember I'd been drunk once before. Yeah. And which is crazy. He was 17 when he made it. That's and glorious. Everyone commented, he seemed like he was one of the older guys and he could kick everyone's butt.
That's
like
so great.
when he was 17 and he tried to, he's like, I remember I tried to stand up and I couldn't. So I sat back down. He goes, he just did that. So Linklater created this environment where there was all this freedom. All the actors, McConaughey was not included because he was from the area. So you had interest. It's really an interesting setup. You have the Hollywood or the New York actors and actresses coming in to make the film. They get cast.
Yeah.
But then they have all the the secondary characters and extras that are from Texas and from the Texas scene.
Yeah.
McConaughey was in the Texas scene. And how he gets cast in the movie is just incredible. But so you have these kind of two worlds, but all the people, the kids that come in from outside, they all stay in a hotel, and it is just party central.
Animal House.
They're all sleeping together. They're all like getting drunk and high, and I mean, they're just they're all kind of just. A lot of them didn't have the high school experience, and so they have it as they make Dazed and Confused.
Brilliant.
And you see any of their interviews, there's only maybe one or two that said they had a horrible experience. And, even Renee Zellweger's in the film as an extra. Wow. She's I don't think she has a speaking line at all. And she's in the background helping Parker Posey drink beer, and it's just like, there's all these great and important air quotes, actors and actresses. And they're just really just like having a great time.
I love it.
And so you had these kind of two worlds. You had, the Austin crew, and then you had everyone else. And it was just party central for a lot of these people. But it was funny when the film kind of came to a close, there were such great relationships made. In fact, one of the actresses, I believe it was, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Joey Lauren Adams, but she drove one of the younger kids who was starting his freshman year of high school to his first day of school.
No way.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
That is glorious.
And of course, he shows up and he's like, wearing his Dazed and Confused crew T-shirt and
so great.
But can you imagine? It was the kid that played Mitch Kramer, who was driven to school. So, let's talk about the film. Like, it starts off with school's out for summer, the Alice Cooper song. Well, first it starts out with Sweet Emotion and the cars in the parking lot and. Parking lot life at my high school was a big deal. Like, people would check out the other cars, who's driving what, hanging out in the parking lot before, after school. It was a thing at my high school. It seemed like it was a thing in this movie. Great start, like Sweet Emotion to start the film. It's pretty incredible.
So especially we go into this film and there aren't a whole lot of films that have a soundtrack that is just this amazing.
Yeah, it's so good.
For a guy that lives in the 1970s, each and every day that he wakes up and gets out of bed, Jeremy, it's pretty incredible that they got the rights to all these songs.
It's good.
It really is.
Well, he wanted to end, in the end of the movie, they drive off they're going to go get Aerosmith tickets.
Yeah.
And it kind of fades to black as the lines in the road or, as they're driving down the road. And it's Slow Ride is playing. And Linklater wanted to get Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin, and it's a freaking crazy story. He sends the movie, Jimmy Page loved laser discs, and they found out about it. And so they sent him all these laser discs of the classic movies, right? So they sent Godfather and all this.
Yeah.
And then they sent him Dazed and Confused, and he said, the last scene has to have rock and roll. It just has to. And Jimmy Page was like, okay, I'm good.
Wow.
Robert Plant? Nope. Page and Plant were not getting along. They were at each other's throats. And Page simply said no Plant said no because Page said yes.
Sounds about right.
And so it's just like, but Slow Ride's great to end it on. I think it works better. So.
Can't go wrong with Foghat first.
Yeah.
Well, and here's a couple other things, right? This is when we see Aerosmith start to make a big comeback.
Right.
This is like their whole, where they start to get Alicia Silverstone. And
Amazing. And Crying and all those songs. Yeah.
And so they're on a comeback tour.
Yeah.
What's interesting too is Page and Plant reunite on MTV Unplugged like a year later and then go on tour again.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's kind of like this weird part of history, especially when it comes to those bands and stuff. I find it fascinating because the Page and Plant No Quarter tour that came out in 94, 95 was one of the worst concert experiences of my life.
You went to it.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember you mentioning
and
this.
It was just and it breaks my heart to have to say that like you see two of the original four dudes from Led Zeppelin and it's among the top
garbage.
two hot dumpster fire trash things that I've ever seen.
Wow.
But I didn't know the story as far as that they were not getting along right then, and that was part of why that song wasn't allowed in the movie.
Page was so flattered. I mean, he watched the movie. He's like, "This is great.
Yeah.
You can use it." And then Plant was like, "No way."
What a dick.
I know, man. It's like, it would have been so interesting. And the soundtrack is amazing. And you're right. It's a good call. Like Aerosmith was really like, I think it was the album called Eat the Rich, or was that just a song on it?
That was one of the songs.
Yeah. I can't remember the album.
They had one of their big songs at the time that did not have Alicia Silverstone was Living on the Edge.
Yes.
And that kind of coincided too with, of course, part of some of their music being used in the film Armageddon.
Yeah.
Again with Affleck and Steven Tyler's daughter.
It's called Get a Grip. It came out in 93.
Yeah.
So, that's really interesting. It's of course, when I was like first really introduced to Aerosmith, believe it or not, it was with Run DMC. That was when I really started going, oh, yeah, there's this band. I had known Dream On.
Right.
You know, I was aware, but when they did the Walk This Way with Run DMC, that's when I'm like, I must listen to Aerosmith now.
I teach that moment in history.
Oh, wow.
Because one of our last units is actually going through like American music forums and stuff. Yeah. And just talking about like that was a cataclysmic moment in American music history.
Yeah. It was such a influential moment.
All the kids that were only listening to hip hop were introduced to rock, and all the kids that were listening to rock were introduced to hip hop. And it was a very cool moment to experience firsthand.
Yeah, it was amazing. And what I find really interesting is the hair bands are dying off right around this time.
Yeah.
And this is grunge, and it's interesting. I remember so many of the grunge like rock artists and singers and all the musicians, they would often talk about the 70s rock scene as their influence. A lot of them would talk about Zeppelin. Yeah. A lot of them would talk about all these like Aerosmith. And so it's interesting, when I was that age, my junior, senior, freshman year of college, my junior, senior high school, freshman year of college, sophomore year, I was listening to all the 70s rock along with what was going on at the present moment. And so as these kids are listening to these songs, it just felt like my current soundtrack of my life.
I bet.
And so it was really interesting that Dazed and Confused sort of caught this moment. It is a product where it reflects on 76, but it's also a product of 93. Yeah. And it's really interesting to see, all of those actors, I was their age. You were their age. Like those actors and actresses. So it's really fascinating to kind of look at the film through two different lenses, the 93 lens and the 76 lens. The movie starts off, the cars in the parking lot. It kind of goes through like the last moments of the school day, which is hilarious. We get sort of the dramatic tension where Pink is given sort of a form he has to sign where he's like, I won't smoke pot and get drunk and have sex over the summer. And it's like, what? And he's a football player. He's the quarterback. They really think they're going to have a run at state the next year, their senior year. Every junior class thinks they're going to have a run at state. Yeah. It's like everyone does. So they think that's going to happen. And he, of course, Pink is such an independent person who is sort of the avatar of Richard Linklater. I mean, he had similar, he was a quarterback his junior year of high school. He quit and didn't play his senior year, but he instead focused on baseball. And there's a baseball movie he made that's sort of like the spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused called Everyone Wants Some, which is awesome. It's a good movie too. But you have this beginning, you have sort of this tension, but it really what's kind of hanging out in the background that it kind of propels the movie early on is hazing these poor 8th graders about to be freshmen.
Yes.
So you have the girls obviously doing horrific shit to these 8th grade girls. I mean, where they're like, I'll do anything. They go up to the guy, will you marry me? What will you do for me?
Yes.
Anything you want. And then the guys are so cruel. And meanwhile, the boys are getting paddled.
Yes.
Did you... Here in Santa Cruz area, did you have were there hazing things going on? Anything like that? We didn't do it that widespread. It was just football related for us. So it was, if there were freshman football players, they got hazed, but it wasn't school wide. Was there anything like that for you guys?
Seeing as how we're past the statute of limitations.
Here we go. Giddy up.
So I think that this is one of the areas where I didn't gel with the film because there wasn't hazing incoming 9th graders until 9th grade had started, right? So there was this total separation of middle school or junior high and high school. Yeah. And I would agree, there was some hazing of freshmen.
Right.
But I saw most of that because, incoming freshmen that played football started in June or whatever, right? So you had 2 months of hazing before school even freaking started.
Yeah, yeah.
We would never end up paddling, but what was big at Soquel High School, where I went to school, and a couple of people listening to this went to school, is we did a lot of swirlies. If you're not familiar with swirly, that's just putting someone's head in the toilet bowl and flushing. Big on canning people, Jeremy, just throwing them in trash cans.
That's a good one.
Or
We
dumpsters.
didn't do that.
Yeah, we put them in dumpsters and put heavy stuff on the lid so they couldn't get out. But here's the biggest hazing, though, and this was so unique to Soquel High School in 70s and 80s, is the main quad where the vast majority of students came during break and lunch was next to the gym. And on the side of the gym were all the freshman lockers.
Okay.
And so whenever a freshman went to go to his or her locker during lunch, the upperclassmen, Jeremy, I'm not talking about lobbing fruit. I'm talking about smoking oranges and apples at like you're fucking Kurt Schilling in the World Series, and you just hear the slam of the fruit on the metal locker, and so many people got hit in the head with flying fruit and stuff. What was great about that though, I'm just I can't wait to be a sophomore so I can do this to the next year's freshman, and that continued until we got a new principal who was all about hugging each other and eating granola and stuff. But that was an intense thing. Every lunch it was going down.
Yeah, it's fascinating just how that I had my freshman year, I was split between Virginia and Alabama. And so it was interesting to see how people were hazed differently. Virginia, it was a little different. It was a little more the school was a little more Breakfast Club where it was true separate groups.
Okay.
You had your skaters, you had your your jocks. There was a lot more separation in the school in Virginia. And so there's more bullying and people being made fun of and some pretty rough stuff. Alabama was fascinating because it was everything was so sports related. So you would get hazed, but it was all through the context of sports.
Okay.
So with football, it was freshmen would have to just clean up the field. They would have to carry all your crap in. You wouldn't allow them to take showers until everyone was done. So they would just sit there just stinking up the place. And then if there was any type of school related activity where you did PE, you worked out, a lot of times you wouldn't let them shower, and so they would have to go through the day just stinking, and a lot of them to take showers anyway.
Well, so. and here's the thing, I know that this is a rabbit trail, but this is one of my pet peeves, and it's something I don't understand either, because we did that aspect of it too, and then I came back into education as a teacher a little bit later. I had other careers going before that, and somewhere between the time I graduated high school and the time I became a teacher in high school, showering went away.
It went away.
Showers are there.
They're there.
They're just not used. And kids come in from the Friday night game and go straight to the dance with just a little bit of aerosol Axe on their bodies. And I'm just
what are you thinking? Yeah.
it's the grossest thing ever.
Yeah. It's, I don't know what happened.
Yeah. I don't know either.
I don't know what happened. They just can't do it. They just can't do it. Yeah. So the hazing was, of course, there's all these paddling moments. When they catch Mitch at his baseball game, there's funny things the the actor that played Mitch, he was asked, hey, can you play baseball? And he basically, his name's Wiley Wiggins is the actor's name, and he was like, yeah, I can play. He couldn't play. And so they get there the night of the shoot where they're filming like the baseball game where he gets caught and paddled, and he can't play, and he can hardly even throw. So there's one shot. It's like it's an over the shoulder kind of shot.
Yeah,
and it's just a dude in a wig and he's like way taller than Wiley Wiggins that played Mitch. So he gets busted when they paddle him. What they did was they put like a metal pole. They would put it in the ground, and the pole would be right behind the kid's butt.
Okay,
and so you just hit that pole, and of course they would take the sound effects out and all that stuff and put in new stuff. But for Wiley Wiggins, he was the first person. They filmed it chronologically.
Okay, wow.
So the film, like as it progresses, is like how it was a shooting schedule too. So he was the first one really paddled, and one of the production assistants, they rigged up kind of padding for his ass. And it was this fiberglass padding thing, and they put it in his in his pants, and they were like, you're pretty good to go. And they told Ben Affleck, like, you can hit him as hard as you want. It won't. And he teed off on him, and the tears are actually real.
That's so great.
Like, he really hit him hard. And
so
Ben Affleck Affleck was really wrestling in interviews with him. He was like, I'm keep getting cast as this bully. And like, I don't really want to be that, but like this film, I might as well. And he's great in the movie as this like he flunked his senior year. He has to repeat
super
it.
Senior, baby.
Oh my gosh. So he plays O'Banion, for those of you trying to remember his character's name. But so the paddling is all throughout. Like that evening, they're getting chased. And of course, there's an earlier moment in the film where mom pulls a shotgun on O'Banion, and that's a great moment. So there's all that stuff going on. But then the other part of the movie is like, we got to get wasted. We got to get kegs. One of the kids, Sean Andrews' character Pickford, is he has to get these, like, he's getting some beer delivered to the house, some kegs, and because mom and dad are going out of town,
naturally,
and the kegs show up early. And so, it's like the party's ruined. And that's sort of like kind of this inciting incident that leads to them ending up at the Moon Tower later in the movie. But it's so funny. And the Pickford character, Sean Andrews, was actually supposed to be one of the leads, like one of the main like characters. And what happened was he was so crazy. His agent literally he had hardly been in anything. And his agent, Devin, said, here's the next Marlon Brando, like in his press stuff. And so this guy rolls onto set thinking he is it. And he fought with Jason London the whole time. They argued constantly. It got to the point where he just shacked up with Mila Jovovich, who was 16.
Nice. 16,
17.
Wow.
And when the filming was done, they ran off to Vegas and got married.
What?
Mom had that shit annulled in 2 months.
Wow.
Like Jovovich's mom, like, found them, like broke that up, but like they ran off, got married, like, so they were just kind of isolated, alone, and both had like really big roles. She was on a lot of the promo stuff because she made Return to the Black Lagoon, which was Blue Lagoon, Black Lagoon.
Something else, man.
Yeah. So Blue Lagoon, she had made that and was sort of one of the few known actors. And so anyways, it's just all that to say is this is what got McConaughey in. He just had one line. And because Sean Andrews was being so difficult, Linklater just kept feeding more and more to McConaughey, and everyone knew it. In almost every interview with every actor and actress, they knew McConaughey was a star.
Wow.
Just the way he carried himself. He ad-libbed, the all right. He got that. He was watching a concert of The Doors, and Morrison went, all right. He just kept repeating it.
Yeah.
And McConaughey loved that and pulled that. And a lot of the film was improv.
Right.
Like they were just improv. It was just improvisation on a lot of the scenes.
So
and
great.
he was just excelling at that. And, you know, I get older and the chicks just stay the same age. That's him. Like, just like, who is this guy that I'm playing?
Right.
He would say something like this. And the crew and Linklater, they just, as it started, they just kept giving him more stuff.
Wow.
And the film ends up where he's the one driving to go get Aerosmith tickets.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's interesting, just these interactions, but they're all trying to get stone and they're trying to get beer.
Yep.
I had a group of friends that wasn't like, it wasn't the main like thrust of everything for us. It wasn't, we were more just like getting into trouble like vandals, like, you know, like thieves and vandals.
Yes.
We weren't trying to get kegs, and we didn't have, it was weird. My group of friends, none of us had an older brother.
Interesting.
And I think that's sort of one of the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
Like if you get an older friend.
Yeah.
What about you? Like, was it beer busts or beer runs or kegs or kegger parties?
I mean, I attended those, but I was definitely part of the group that I was part of was definitely more of the let's stir shit up and hopefully not get caught by the cops.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like looking back, I drank twice during my senior year.
Yeah.
Once was like a couple days after the 7.1 earthquake where our entire city was like shut down and cut off.
What else are you going to do?
If he ain't drinking to this, he ain't going to. So I like, there was that. And then it was like grad night.
Yeah.
So like that was never it for me. Had like plenty of the dudes I played football with and stuff like that was their mission every weekend. Right. But no, I was very much, and not having an older brother either, but very much part of the, let's see what kind of shit we can come up with that is probably property destruction and stuff like that.
That was us, man.
Yeah.
We were cruising around was big.
Yep.
In Alabama, the car culture was out of control.
Really?
Yeah. It was, what are you driving? How fast is it?
Wow.
There was a place kind of I'm from Tuscaloosa. And so there's a place sort of outside of Tuscaloosa that was just, it's a road. It's now highly developed. So it isn't that anymore, but nothing was out there, and it was a straight shot, and everyone would go out there, and it was just drag racing. Like, it was just like whose car against whose car.
Nice.
People would go watch it, and even when it wasn't a thing where everyone was going out there, if you were driving around with a buddy, you were like, let's go out and let's race.
Yeah.
Like, and there were no one out there, and you just race each other down this road. And
incredible.
And you could see people coming from miles away. Like, it was really weird because it was hard for the police to get any, like if they were coming, you just left.
Yeah.
And like you saw them in plenty of time and got away.
Right.
But the car culture was very similar to the Dazed and Confused. Like, everyone was looking under their hoods.
Yeah.
It was a conversation piece all the time. And here I am in my Nissan 200 SX, 4-cylinder. I could barely, it took me a while to get to 60. Let me just tell you
I'm
that.
sure.
So I was always disappointed as I watched people pull into the parking lot in their muscle cars. And I'm like, my little Nissan.
Nice. Nice.
I called it silver shit. That's what I called it. Silver shit. What was there a car culture at SoCal?
No, I mean, there was a couple of kids that had like nice cars.
Right.
But it wasn't a thing. Cruising was a thing. But as far as like, I don't think most of the kids I went to school with would have known what to do if they actually opened up the hood of a car and stared at the engine.
Yeah, and Dazed and Confused, it's a lot of, they're at the Emporium, which, where was that when I was in high school?
Yes.
Like, there was places sort of like that, but nothing quite like that, where everyone's hanging out and there's like fooseball table. Like, no. And people are going over. So one difference, at least in my Alabama experience, is there's a moment where one of the guys gives Mitch some money. He's like, go get me a six-pack.
Yeah.
And he goes over and gets a 6-pack and just feeds the store guy the lines that he heard Wooderson McConaughey say earlier.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm still working for the city. I'm 18, all this crap. And it's so funny. That never would have happened in Alabama.
Really?
Like, you got carded at the drop of a hat.
Wow.
Like, one time I even went in and I was of age, and I bought a Playboy. And I was just like, Elle McPherson was on the
Yeah.
Playboy. So I was like 20 or 21. I was like buying a Playboy.
Yeah.
Articles. And of course, great reading. And they carded me, and then they wouldn't sell it to me even though I was of age.
What?
It was just the morality police.
Wow.
So that was a thing where I was at.
Wow.
And so there's no way you could have just strolled in and got a 6-pack.
That is wild.
And so as I'm watching it, Dazed and Confused, I'm like, what the heck is like, this is so out of, like, none of that happened. And
I as the taller friend in most groups.
oh yeah, you could probably.
I only got carded once.
Wow. Wow.
And by that time I had a fake ID. So
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
but yeah, that was that. Yeah, it was weird. Like getting alcohol in Santa Cruz in the 80s was not a bit like it was easily accessible.
Yeah.
Easily accessible.
Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Man, Santa Cruz. So in Alabama at the time, I don't know if the laws have changed, but they didn't sell anything starting Saturday night at, I can't remember what the hour was, but it was early, man.
Yeah.
It was like Saturday night, like 10.
Whoa.
Like they quit selling alcohol, and then Sunday, no alcohol.
When I went to school in Illinois, not the county that the university was in, they were proudly repeat winners of Playboy's Party School of the Year. Go Salukis.
Yeah.
But the county that I lived in, it was a dry county on Sundays.
Yeah.
And it was the weirdest thing because that's why I was waiting tables, and we couldn't give away champagne on Valentine's one year, and another time like it was a Super Bowl and we couldn't sell beer.
That's crazy.
It was so upside down. And I was saying at the same time, this is how backwards. The same county at the same time, even though Sunday was dry county day, they had literal, not drive up, Jeremy, but drive in liquor stores.
That's great.
Where you go into a tunnel that's a liquor store, and they say, "What do you want?" And then you hand them the cash, and they put it in your trunk, and you just drive through the other side of the store.
Thank God for those places. It's crazy because, in Tuscaloosa, where I was living and went to high school, this is where the University of Alabama was. It was party central.
Yeah.
And cruising was a thing, like driving around.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times in high school I drove down Sorority Row at the University of Alabama. I mean, it was just
nice.
a million.
Yeah,
It was like, and for those of you who don't know, the high school I went to, Central of Tuscaloosa, was literally across the street from the stadium. I mean, it was like you could just see it.
Yeah.
Like from the front door of the high school, you see the stadium.
Wow.
And so we're right there, and the
Yeah.
sorority row's right there. So
Yeah.
you just, zip, zip, it was like, I'm just going to go down this road on the way home. Like, why not? Oh my God. So yeah, it was such a thing, and everything was so intertwined with the college life.
Yeah.
And so you almost, when you were a senior, you thought you were in college because the university was right there.
Sure.
And you were running into college students all the time and
Right.
at parties, and like it was a bizarre mix. But in Dazed and Confused, this kind of car culture, this cruising around, the hanging out at Sonic.
Yeah.
Yeah, this stuff was a thing, man. It was Burger King in Alabama. Everybody would park at the Burger King because it had a big parking lot.
Nice.
And there would be 50 cars out there.
Yeah.
And people just hanging out.
Yeah.
And it was just like, police would always come by. And it
Right.
was just like, it was a thing. So, but that's what I think makes Dazed and Confused so interesting, is it does give you a picture of 76.
Yeah.
And so many people that lived in kind of a lot of the southern states, but even Midwest, they're like, yeah, that was my high school experience in the 70s.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting about the film is it has this weird authenticity, I think, that people from 80s and the 90s, I don't know after that, because
Right.
but I feel like people can relate to the film. And I think that gives it its staying power, is so many people can relate to it.
I think so, but like here comes the question though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is because so much has changed, and listen, I don't want this to come across as like in our generation it was better, right? But like kids today, at least where we're at,
Right.
they don't cruise.
No, they don't.
They're so attached to like with their devices
Right.
that like I don't even know what they do like socially for fun. I mean, I know that there's drinking and partying going on, all that crap, but I mean, like, how would the kids that we teach relate with this film? I don't know. Some of the themes, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
when it comes to like the coming of age part of things, but not like the culture part of things and socializing part of things when it comes to cruising or car culture, or for that matter, even just some of those mischievous things that we did in the heyday.
Yeah. It happens, but it's so rare.
Yeah.
Like you'll get like a group of kids and
Yeah.
you're like, oh yeah, they remind me of
Right.
me.
Right.
You know, and they pass your class and the others don't.
Thank you.
But
Yes.
but there are a sizable number of kids today, just from my point of view,
Yeah.
that their weekend is at home.
Yep.
Like they're on a device.
Right.
I mean, they're talking to their friends.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but they're watching Netflix and they're like, I mean, yeah, we had video games. We had like Sega and Nintendo and all that stuff. But we play it, but it wasn't like,
Yeah.
I just remember just being out a lot.
Right.
Like a lot. And in fact, at one point, my junior year, my parents had just had it. And they literally said to me, we're done. You can stay out as long as you want. If you don't come home, that's fine. But we're done parenting you.
Whoa.
Like, so you go do whatever you want to do. And I was like, finally. And I didn't come home that first weekend. And second weekend, I was out a lot.
Yeah.
Third weekend, I was out. And then I started coming home at like midnight.
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
It just kind of wore off after a while. I'm like,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Like maybe I'll stay out. But it was
Yeah.
like, it was weird. It was this like total reverse psychology moment that completely worked.
If you're not breaking rules, it gets a lot less fun. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
It was weird. And, but yeah, I had senior year, I had immense freedom.
Yeah.
But a lot of my friends did.
Yeah.
Like it was not be home by this time,
Right.
be home by that. I mean, it was just like, we're out.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure there were people that like, I just don't remember that were like, had to have curfews or
Right.
whatever. But my group of friends did. I mean, we were just,
same way.
we were just out,
Yeah.
you know, and it was always like, we didn't have cell phones. So there was always like, I promise I'll be here at this time.
Right.
And if they weren't, you found a payphone and called them.
Yeah.
It was that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
Like, where are you, man? Like,
Yeah.
you know, but it was like, where's a payphone at?
Right.
Like, oh yeah, there's one at the 7-Eleven. Like,
Yeah.
it was that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, they didn't show up. Oh, well, let's
Exactly.
leave.
Life
And
goes
then
on.
and sometimes people would show up late and no one was there. And I think that's one of the reasons why Dazed can kind of connect with a lot of generations is
Yeah.
there is almost a dividing point when the iPhone releases.
For sure.
Where smart technology, smartphones become the thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's even a article that came out recently that was saying the phone and GPS is actually diminishing the brain function of people in general.
Yes, I concur.
Because they're not using maps, and using maps exercises a part of your brain that is just not getting out of the exercise anymore.
Jeremy, listen, I could not tell. We have been friends since 2015-ish.
Yeah.
I have no fucking idea what your phone number is, bro.
But back then, you knew like 10 guys easily.
Easily.
Yeah.
I know my wife's number. I know my mother's number. I can probably figure out like 3 or 4 other people.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah, I remembered people's numbers based on football players' numbers. I would go, oh yeah, you know, I still remember, Robert, if you're listening, 553-3586. It was Martin Houston, Keith McCants. I remember. 35 Martin Houston,
glorious.
86
Glorious.
Keith McCants.
Yes.
I remember, man.
Oh.
It's so funny, though. It's just how there is this dividing line, and Dazed and Confused catches on one side of it and catches a whole lot of generations.
Right.
And the movie is just so much fun in so many ways. So you have the car culture, you have, you know, trying to get beer, get stoned, you're trying to get laid. I mean, it's all those things. And then it starts moving toward the McConaughey gets a bunch of kegs.
Right.
And they called it I think it was a beer run or a beer bash or something like that. In Alabama, we called it keggers.
Yeah.
That's what we called it in Alabama. So I don't know if different places called it different things, but they basically have this party out in the middle of the woods.
Yes.
And that shit happened like in where I was from. And
Yes.
so they're all showing there's a moon tower out there that I think actually did exist.
Okay.
So I don't think it was as tall as they had made it seem there, but
Sure.
there was a little scaffolding tower that people were climbing up. But that all of those actors and actresses were pretty hammered because
can
there's
imagine.
all these night shoots.
Yeah.
So they would shoot all night long, sleep during the day, go back at night. And, you know, if they're working on like, you know, there's a moment where Nicky Katt's character, Clint, gets in a fight where he beats the crap out of, oh gosh, what was it? I can't remember the character's names. Mike, who's Adam Goldberg from Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
You know, they have that fist fight. So if they're working on that scene, everyone else is just there,
Right.
hanging out,
Right.
drinking. And they had fake like weed, like, and you could smoke it, but it was just like nothing, you know? And so finally people started bringing the real stuff. And it just was like, people were just getting hammered every single night.
Missed my calling.
Yeah, but they're all hanging out at the party. And it's so, that party culture is so interesting because I just remember it was what you talked about during the week, where you're going to end up that weekend.
Right.
And then normally it was like Monday, Tuesday, talking about the weekend party.
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, where's the next one going to be?
Right.
And that was the pattern almost all
Very
freaking,
cyclical. Yes.
Yeah, all year long. Yeah, there's a lot of moments. We had a lot of fights where I was from. Like, I thankfully stayed clear of most of that stuff.
Yeah.
But there was always the kids that you knew were tough. Like, that were like, well, that kid is, you know, don't mess with him. He'll kick your butt. And then there would be fights that everyone would talk about.
Sure.
You know, did you hear so-and-so beat up so-and-so?
Sure.
You know, and it was so interesting in that moment where Adam Goldberg's character, Mike, is trying to, he gets kind of bullied and he's like, gets liquid courage and he goes and he's like, if I just hit him once, they'll break the fight up and it'll be okay. And that ain't what happens. It's like he gets wailed on. And he says, you know, people just remember there was a fight. I remember people saying who won. Oh, so-and-so kicked so-and-so's butt.
For sure.
That was sort of the thing. But like, it was a thing. Like, fighting was a big deal.
We even had my sophomore, junior years, we had impromptu is not the right word, but we had boxing matches behind the gym. And so we'd have like these 12-ounce gloves on.
Oh, Lordy.
And it was just like,
beat the crap out of each other.
Just beat the hell out of each other. Just beat the hell out of each other. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you got to love it. Yeah. It's just, there's certain things that are universal with that age.
Yeah.
Like, it's like trying to figure yourself out.
Yep.
Fighting. Like, it's just so dumb. It's so stupid.
It is.
And when you look back on it, you just kind of have to laugh and thank God no one really got hurt.
Right.
You know?
Right.
The film is really interesting because it kind of moves into this like party kind of crazy, and then it's just like a real night of party, and you start to crash and come down. But like there were so many moments of when the party's coming down, it's like, I'm just going to stay up all night.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a group of them that do, and they're going to get Aerosmith tickets. But it's so interesting. I don't think it changed that much from when I was a high school student, and there's always selective memory.
Sure.
Like, and so I have 2 points. One is like, I remember like the big thing going on was like, can we get tickets to Nirvana?
Yeah.
Like, they're coming to Birmingham.
Yeah.
Like, let's go see them. I remember that. But the other thing is I remember it just kind of being boring. I remember a lot of boredom moments. Like, I'm bored. Like, we're bored. You know, there's a moment where a lot of the girls in the film are like flipping bottle caps because they're just like, and one of them says, I am so bored.
Yeah.
And it's like, like Dazed and Confused walks this weird tightrope where it depicts the boredom that was common, like at that age. In your experience, I mean, obviously during the football season, there was always stuff going on, busy, but like off season, man, I remember a lot of I'm bored kind of moments.
Yeah. And I think, and hence the reason why we were out doing mailbox baseball and making improvised explosive devices.
Exactly. And yes.
And stuff like that. So I mean, that's all a product or a byproduct of being bored, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's one of the things that, you know, you asked very early in the show about like, is this like kind of the premier example of high school life portrayed? And anyone that's been listening to us for any length of time knows that I have just a special place in my heart for Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Of course, yeah.
And as much as that was even built on actual experiences that Cameron Crowe got as an undercover dude, it still plays more like a movie,
right?
Where this hits home on so many levels. Yeah. But here's my question though, because I can look at Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and I've got my favorite moments, I've got my favorite characters, but for you, like, I can identify with like the macro things going on in Dazed and Confused, but there's not anyone that I really go like, that was me. Do you have someone in this cast who's like, that was me?
Yes and no. The inner world of Pink, like him thinking like, this ain't it.
Yeah.
I had those moments. Like where I was like, this ain't it.
Yeah.
Like this is really empty. Like I really did have those moments. But no, I didn't. I walked a weird line between like nerddom. Yeah. I was into like nerdy things. And so like I had groups of friends that were sort of nerdy. Like we played role-playing games. Yeah. Like it was Dungeons and Dragons or the Star Wars role. Like this was high school. Like we were doing this. So I had that group of friends. And then I actually had 3 groups of friends. I had the nerds. Yeah. And then I had the fucking hoodlums, like criminal, like we're stealing shit, and if we got caught, it was prison. Yeah, like it was that stuff. And then I had another group of friends that actually went to church, and like they were in my youth group at church, and those guys I'm still friends with.
Interesting,
which is really interesting. Like I don't talk to the other 2 groups at all. And there was some cross-pollination, but there was 3 kind of worlds that you know, and I played sports with the guys that I went to church with. So
you're gonna have to tell me off air like some of the things that you guys stole.
It was what
maybe that's a Patreon
my
episode.
Kids don't even, my wife doesn't even know, to be honest. Yeah, I've never sat her down and said I stole this and when I was a sophomore. never said that. It's interesting, but no one there was some of the actors, like I think every single female actor in this movie is unbelievably beautiful. Like there's that. Yeah. And then there's like almost every guy is super charismatic. Yeah. Like even if they're dorky. Yeah. Because I know you don't like Anthony Rapp's character.
Tony. No, I just don't like Anthony Rapp. I just don't like Anthony Rapp. I could care less about his character. That motherfucker. So 2 years after this is made, he gets the one of the leads in the musical Rent, which is a favorite of mine. Yeah. And Jonathan Larson, who wrote Rent, actually was very purposeful about casting Anthony Rapp. And as Rent became more and more fleshed out, it became more of like Anthony's character story than the other ones. And so we, my wife and our friends went to see Rent. This is probably 12 years ago, give or take. Yeah. And I had read Anthony Rapp's autobiography and so
I had no idea.
Okay. And so we're outside the artist interest after the show. You know, the artists come out and they're gonna sign your playbill and stuff. And I've got my friend ready to take a picture. And this is pre iPhone era, right? Yeah. And I go, Anthony, look up. And he doesn't look up and he keeps writing. He goes, I'm not going to, because if I have to do that, then I have to do it for everybody. To which I respond, this is kind of like your shit moment in New Orleans. To which I respond, Anthony, I paid $150 for these fucking tickets. I think I'm okay with you taking the time to look up. And he doesn't look up.
Oh, wow.
And so my friend got this great picture of Anthony Rapp head down signing a thing with me, like just giving him the dirtiest look and flipping him off. It was glorious. So
yeah, it's unbelievable.
Turd.
Yeah, he was, there's an amazing book that is it's an oral history of Dazed and Confused. Okay. And I've been listening to the Audible version of it, and I'm trying to look up the name of it. I think it's all right. To be honest, I think that's the name. It is. It's all right. All right. Nice. And it's the oral history, and it's incredible. But they interview pretty much everyone, except Mila Jovovich and Sean Andrews. Okay. They didn't do any interviews, but pretty much everyone else did. Yeah. And Anthony Rapp talks about how he just was like kept to himself, like just kind of isolated, and some of the actors and actresses respected that. They were like, cool. Yeah. Some were like, man, like it's kind of a bummer he didn't hang out, with us. And
He's just kind of a weird dude, I think.
Yeah,
Because his character was 8th grader coming into 9th grade, right?
he was a junior senior character.
Was he? Okay,
Yeah,
I thought
he was in the car with Giovanni Ribisi's sister, and like and Goldberg.
Yeah.
So and they have that wonderful moment where Goldberg's in the back and he's like, I don't want to be a lawyer or whatever.
Yes,
he's like, I want to dance.
yes.
It's a great scene. But yeah, it's interesting, just like who connected. McConaughey's story honestly is really interesting and funny and sad. Just during that, his dad died.
Oh, wow.
While they were making it.
Okay.
He went to the funeral. Some of the actors went with him.
Wow.
To it, and it was really sweet. And what's so funny though was his dad told Matthew McConaughey, said, "When I die, I'm going to die while I'm fucking." And he died while he was fucking. His mom, like Matthew McConaughey's like mom and dad, he died. And what's so funny, his mom was like, he finished. Like, and it was like, and Matthew's like, awesome. Like, awesome dad. Yeah. Awesome dad. And yet he has all this sadness.
Yeah.
And, he lost his father, who was this larger than life figure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was back on set like a day later. Wow. And people were like, are you okay? Are you all right? He's like, I just want to work. I just want to. And he's like, my dad got to see me begin the career. Like, he's like, I have peace that my dad was able to know what I would be doing for the rest of my life and got to see a little bit of me doing incredible. That. So really interesting. His casting was crazy, where he hears the casting director who cast Fast Times is at a hotel, and at the hotel bar, he goes there. They hang out all night long, hit it off. They get drunk together. The guy is like, I'm casting you in this movie. I got like a small part.
So great.
So he really just like kind of inserted himself into the film and like kept like just blowing people away. And then of course, I think most people remember him when they think of this movie.
I think so.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even like thought of. That character wasn't even on the radar.
That's incredible.
In the script and when they started filming. And of course, during the course of this, he's it. Like he becomes what people remember.
Right.
And Dazed and Confused. It's unbelievable. Let's take a break because we got to talk. There can be only one.
Oh.
There can be only one.
All right, Devin. What is the single best thing about Dazed and Confused? It can be a moment, a scene, a line, a character, a song.
Yeah.
Like what for you when you look back on Dazed and Confused? What's your favorite?
I think. Well, I guess it's going to be. I'm going to cheat a little bit because it's going to be two things. But one is going to be just the way that they took us into the lives of these characters, and it felt organic.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how you label that. And then I already mentioned this other part, but that's the freaking soundtrack, man.
It's incredible.
That is the soundtrack.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So I like, if you don't have that soundtrack, please go pirate it, and enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Yeah. It really is. And Richard Linklater does an amazing job of knowing where to place the songs.
Yeah.
And when you watch the movie, sometimes you don't know if the song is like, is a song a literal representation? Like, so my favorite moment is when McConaughey and London and Wiggins walk into the Emporium.
Yeah.
And it goes from a normal, like 24 frames a second, and then it slows down.
Yeah.
And it's Bob Dylan's Hurricane.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's about a boxer, could have been great, but he's past his prime.
Right.
And here's McConaughey walking in as this 20, I think he's supposed to be 23 in the movie, hanging out at an Emporium where high school kids hang out.
Right.
There's just something creepy and weird, yet like this guy is still kind of cool and like engaging. And it's just fascinating. That song placement and it is one of the best. I think every actor or actress dreams of an entrance scene in slow-mo as cool as that.
Yeah.
Because it's just so freaking cool. And that, as just a film teacher, I love that moment. I just love it to death. And I think it's great. I saw that's number one. That is my, like, there can be only one moment. A second place would literally be all the conversations that just feel so organic.
Yeah.
Like it's just, they're kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
But they ring so true. It's just like, it was weird. On Friday nights, you might end up in one car with some guys. You're like, oh yeah, you're in my biology class.
Right,
like I know you,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And then the next thing you know, you're in another car, ending the night in another car somewhere else with some other people you kind of know.
Right.
And the conversations are never deep.
Right.
There's never substance. It's just kind of like, are you getting drunk? Are you doing that? Like, oh yeah, we played basketball the other day.
Right.
You know, so it for some reason, Dazed and Confused just got that. And I think you would think it would be easy to do, but like American Graffiti, George Lucas was able to do it.
Right.
Fast Times has moments like that.
Yeah.
But like you said, it feels like a movie.
Right.
You know, it has a story structure,
Right,
and like,
right.
and Breakfast Club does too.
Right.
Breakfast Club has some moments, but every single moment in Breakfast Club, which by the way I love, every moment is it's hyper dramatic.
Totally.
And that's how John Hughes made his movies. It's
Right.
just like funny, engaging, hyper dramatic.
Right.
Can't look away.
Yeah.
Dazed and Confused is a whole different thing, man.
Yeah.
It's like you're just there,
Right.
with all these real kids on a real Friday night in May of '76.
Right.
It's bizarre, and that's one of the things I love most about the movie. So we got as we end the show, we got another. We're doing, of course, our videos on YouTube. You can go check that out. We just did a Dazed and Confused one, but True Romance, Devin, is our next podcast episode.
Wow.
It's also the 30th anniversary. Can you believe it? So this came out. So Dazed and Confused came out in September of '93. I think True Romance came out the same month. I could be wrong. It might have been a summer release, but for some reason I remember seeing it in the fall. Dude. So True Romance came out September 10th. Dazed and Confused came out September 24th.
Wow.
So like September movies, '93, what a month. Like two, I think, classics. So the next one we're doing is True Romance. Tony Scott directed it. Quentin Tarantino wrote the script. It has an amazing cast.
I have not watched this in years.
Oh, yeah. I actually, it was on the rotation all the time, and I haven't seen it in 20 years.
So for those of you that are unfamiliar with this, I'm just going to read this little paragraph from IMDb to whet your appetite.
Yes.
Here we are. In Detroit, a lonely pop culture geek marries a call girl, steals cocaine from her pimp, and tries to sell it in Hollywood. Meanwhile, the owners of the cocaine, the mob, track them down in an attempt to reclaim it.
Holy shit.
I mean,
it's dynamite.
Talk about taking me back to my own childhood.
So yeah, so if you're chomping at the bit, or if you're like, man, I haven't seen that in a long, go rewatch it, and in about a week or so we'll be doing True Romance. You can always find us on Patreon, where we have you get all the videos we're doing on YouTube early. You also get all the podcast episodes and additional ones that we don't release into the wild. You get those for being a patron. So we have a lot going on. We have the sequel March Madness coming up.
Oh yeah.
Best 80s sequel March Madness. That's coming up for our patrons. It'll be a podcast coming up. Carl and I did heavy research on this way back in the fall of 2022, and we'll be unveiling that bracket soon. So as always, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.